Okay, final assembly of the shift shaft now. I've got my stopper post installed, and I've got this little spring hook post tapped into the hole. The assembly is the shift shaft, the spacer, and this bigger spring with the two ends of the spring on either side of the tab. The stopper lever spring, and I found the easiest, and there's a spacer, which for me right now is sitting in there. Let me show you. That spacer goes on, or the washer, sorry, goes right on the end like that. Now, the easiest way to get this assembly in is, first, do not worry about the orientation of the shift drum or anything else. It will sort itself out. Go ahead and push the entire shift shaft right into that recess. Then, spin this entire assembly so that either end or either side of this larger spring falls on each side of that stopper post right here. Then keep pushing this down until this upper piece is sitting right on where these tabs that stick out of the shift drum are. Okay, then the last step is you need to pull this spring down around this post right here. So let me get a little leverage. I found the best way to do this is with a flat blade screwdriver. Just get it in the end. Try to pull that thing down and around. It's tough because there's not a lot of room to work here. But sometimes I can get it on the first shot. Sometimes not. There we go. Okay. Now, I want to go through a procedure to make sure that this transmission is shifting correctly before I bolt everything up. So let me show you how I do that. Okay. I've attached this little linkage piece on the end of the shift shaft just so I have something to grab onto, and that'll allow me to actually shift the transmission. Right now I have no idea what gear it's in. It doesn't matter. Just like if you got on the bike, you would just, hammer that gear shift down a few times to drop it into first and then bring it up halfway to neutral. I can do the same right here. So what I can do with the shift shaft is just turn it with my hand. I can kind of spin this around a little bit as well, and we can maybe start trying to move the gears around until I get it down into what I think is first gear. All right? So I believe I'm in first right now. This is first gear, and when this pinion gear is shifted over this direction, it engages first gear. Now if I come back halfway, I should be able to pop it into neutral by moving this over without engaging second gear all the way. So I think that's neutral. I can check it by spinning the drive axle. If the drive axle can spin without all these gears spinning, then I know it's in neutral. And there it is. Anyway, from here I can shift it up into second gear, and then over into third gear. It's a little hard with my hand. I'm not getting that positive pressure, but that was fifth and sixth, so now I'm in sixth gear. Anyway, it appears to be working just fine. I can shift it back down again. Fifth. Hard on the hand. Fourth. Third. Neutral, I think I'm in now. No, not anymore. That looks to be second gear, I think. That's neutral, right there. And then lastly, down into first again. Anyway, looks like it's working just fine and dandy. That's the shift shaft and the transmission. Alright, only thing left to do now on the shift shaft is put the cover plate back on. And I just want to mention that when I pull the old gaskets off these things, acetone and an Ajax pad is your friend. I personally do not use razor blade, because really all you're going to do is take off the metal. But some acetone and an Ajax will scrub that old gasket material right off, no problem. Anyway, throw a new gasket on this and bolt it right up, and that whole shift shaft assembly is finished. I did go through and clean out and re-grease that bearing that sits right in there. So, gave that thing a once over. Other than that, nothing else to it. I've gone through and installed all the new big end bearings into the connection rod and the connection rod cap. These can only be installed in one direction because of the little tabs right here. And there's not much to it. You just press, sort of, with your fingers, press them in. And now I'm going to go through the procedure real quick to verify that I have the correct bearings, the correct bearing sizes. Notice on this bearing there's a little white stripe. So that's what cylinder 3, connection piston, and connection rod assembly 3 called for. And the way I can check it is with this material called plastigage. Plastigage is a very small plastic thread. Try to get you in focus. You can cut little pieces off from this packaging, and then you place this little piece of plastigage, in this case, right on the pin. And then what happens is you go ahead and connect this up, torque it down, which has the effect of flattening this little piece of plastic. Then you remove the connection rod. What will be left is a flattened out piece of plastic here. And then you compare the width of that flattened plastic to the widths that are on the packaging of this plastigage. You pick the closest one and then you take the reading. And there's numerics right next to them that show these values. And then you compare that to your factory manual to find out if it's squished the correct amount. I finished torquing this down to 25 pounds. And then I immediately unbolted it. We should be able to slide the cap right off. Get the connection rod out of the way. Now let's spin this crankshaft over. And boy, it might be hard to see on the video, but I've got a nice squished out piece of green plastic. I'm going to take my measures here. I'm on the millimeter side. And I'm going to say that's on the 0.038. It says that the clearance has to be between 0.016 and 0.040 millimeters. Mine's 0.038. So it is within spec. It's close, but it's within spec. So that looks okay. Okay, I just got done checking the clearances on each of these crank shaft piston pin to piston pin clearances. And the way I did it is I went ahead and after installing all the journal bearings, dropped the crankshaft into this upper crankcase half. I took my lower crankcase half and went ahead and slipped it down on top. I went through and tightened only the bolts 1 through 10 on this assembly, down to their proper torque specification. And then I went ahead and loosened them, pulled this half off. Now what I had done is put some plastigage on each of these pins, and now with my plastigage measure I can go through and check the widths of each of these. Sorry, there we go. Check the widths of each of these squished plastigages and make sure they're all within spec. I just did that, and they are all within spec. Some are on the edge, but they are within spec. And again, I just replaced the journal bearings with the exact same colors that were in the machine originally. So I'm pretty comfortable now that I haven't done anything egregiously wrong. I'm going to clean off this plastigage now, take it off with some contact cleaner, and then continue with my assembly.